Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Facebook. And let's talk today about some things that could help you not have to hire a tax attorney or a tax resolution firm at all. I titled this video Oklahoma Tax Lawyer Exposed, but in a good way. And I guess what I mean here is that I'm going to give you some advice here that may be kind of contrary to my existence as a tax lawyer, but I think it might help you out, and since it is kind of contrary to our interests, I think that you might get something out of this. If you're getting anything out of these videos, you might also enjoy logging on to traviswatkinsbook.com, where we have lots of these types of tips and strategies. But let's talk today about some things that you could do to avoid having to hire a tax attorney. Number one, first of all, this one is kind of obvious, but you need to file on time, and don't extend your filing and payment deadlines if you can avoid that. You know, I hear a lot of times from business people, small business owners, that they just need to file an extension and get that extended to get their IRS filing and payment dates extended because, for instance, they're waiting on K-1s or, you know, partnership type of income statements. And so, you know, there are a lot of times when you might need to extend your filing deadline. You can never extend your payment deadline. But if you can avoid this, you know, a lot of these small business owners that tell me that they just file an extension and push it off every year, they're the very ones that have the ability to kind of control when the K-1 gets filed in the first place. If you're a partnership or company of 2 or 3, you can definitely control when you send out the K-1 to yourself. And you know, this is just the best practice here. You can avoid having a problem down the road if you can just go ahead and file that tax return and pay it along the way through quarterlies on time. Don't prolong the inevitable. You're just racking up crippling penalties and interest and essentially lining the government pockets by waiting and prolonging the inevitable return that you're going to have to file. The second tip here on avoiding a tax attorney or tax resolution firm is you can do some things yourself when it comes to paper audits, and let me explain what that means. The IRS routinely sends out paper notices to taxpayers and says, explain to us why your return doesn't match what third parties have told the IRS that they have paid you along the way. And what I'm talking about there is 1099s, for instance. So if you've got minor mistakes there or things that need to be shorn up with the IRS, such as these reporting type matters aren't jiving with your tax return, by all means you can certainly discuss those things with the IRS, and it probably would save you a lot of time and money to go ahead and do those things for yourself. Of course, if there is a problem there, and what we're looking at here is if you have a difference of 20% or more of a mistake on your income. In other words, if you've underreported 20% or more, now you're starting to look at things like some significant penalties there, that would be a reason why you might hire a tax professional to take care of that issue for you. All right. Number 3, if you can pay back what you owe within 120 days, that's the magic number there, you may not need a tax resolution professional to assist you there. You can call the IRS in those situations and obtain a reprieve, 120 days or so, to pay your taxes, and they will do that pretty routinely if you can convince them that you, for instance, have a windfall coming down the pipe, or you've got somebody who's going to assist you in paying off that debt within 120 days. Then especially if you haven't been in tax trouble before, you can call them up and just tell them, hey, please give me 120 days to pay this. Now, that doesn't stop penalties and interest from accruing. It doesn't necessarily stop the IRS from filing a lien in that situation. But all things considered, if you're calling them, let's say about the same time that you are filing a tax return, for instance, you just call them and you tell them, I need 120 extra days to pay this thing, and they will oftentimes give you that request, grant that request, and you don't need a tax professional to assist you with that. Number 4, if you owe less than $10,000, you probably have heard that, or $15,000. Some tax resolution companies are even saying $20,000 or more in tax debt is when you should call them. But what they're getting at here is that you're probably not getting a good bang for your buck if you are owing less than like $10,000 or so, mainly because tax resolution outfits, and mine included, follow a pretty loose industry standard when it comes to the fee, which is typically about 10% of what a taxpayer owes, is kind of the rule of thumb of what that looks like when you go to hire a tax professional. So there's also, most tax resolution firms are going to set kind of a floor on that fee, and what I'm talking about there is a lot of them won't do any type of tax resolution for you if for less than a $2,500 fee, for instance. So if you're owing $10,000 and you're paying $2,500 or more, it's starting to get into just a not feasible, not logical situation where you're probably not getting a very good bang for your buck if you owe $10,000 or less. So if you're in that situation, there's a plethora of things on the IRS website. The Taxpayer Advocate Service sometimes may be able to help you. They're kind of like the public defender's office, for lack of a better analogy, when we're talking about criminal matters. And you should, by all means, try those things first. All right. Number 5, if you have a good track record of filing and paying on time, let's say for 5 years, you may not need a tax professional or tax resolution company to come in and assist you. There is this thing at the IRS called the First Time Penalty Abatement or Forgiveness Plan, where if you've been a good boy or girl for 5 years and this is kind of just a hiccup, bump in the road where you've got one tax year that you just fell behind, then you may be able to call on your own to the IRS and ask them for this first time penalty abatement. And if you've been good, the IRS will often go ahead and just that 1 year knock off the penalties and associated interest. They never knock off straight interest on these things, unfortunately. But that can provide folks a pretty good bang for their buck if you do that on your own, and you can certainly do so. And I'll just kind of a little tip here also for you. I said that if you've been good, they may do that for you as of right, without having to explain a whole lot of circumstances of why you got into trouble in the first place. But even if you haven't been good, a lot of times you can call up the IRS and get that 1 year first time penalty abatement, and it goes through sometimes. Number 6, this one's kind of a harsh one. You may not need a tax professional if you can pay your IRS debt, but you just simply don't want to do so. And what I'm talking about here is there are some folks who have bought into the lie that we don't have to pay taxes here in America. And that, folks, just simply isn't true. There are websites, and there used to be quite a few commercials on these types of tax protesting packages that you could buy pre-bundled, of all the arguments that you can tell the IRS that we're a voluntary tax system, that paying taxes are illegal. Nonsense is really what it is. And if you fall into that group, you may not need a tax professional, you may need a criminal lawyer, because that incites the wrath of the IRS if they smell a tax protest there in the mix. So don't do that. All right, number 7, last but not least, if you have the time to call the IRS and wait often on very long holding times with the IRS, and you have the guts to negotiate with the IRS and to, this is most important, ask them for more, then you may not need a tax professional. And let me explain what I'm talking about here. If you've got the time to sit there, sometimes our office will, even on a taxpayer professional priority hotline, we may wait 3-4 hours sometimes to talk to the person that we want to talk to at the IRS. So if you've got that kind of time on your hands, by all means, that may be something that you'd be interested in. And most importantly, if you have the ability to kind of under pressure be able to ask the IRS for more time to, for instance, file your tax return, to ask them for more time to pay, for instance, then that may be a situation where you could feel comfortable doing these types of things on your own. I don't like to use scare tactics or anything like that, but the IRS can be intimidating, and really that's kind of where we come in the process. The secret sauce, though, however, I'll just go ahead and come out with it with our firm, is that we can, in most circumstances, buy you some time to pay, to file, to come up with a plan that is something better than the IRS just dipping into your bank account or your wages and kind of having their way with you. But I often say the commodity, the only commodity here that we sell at my firm is time. We can, in most circumstances, buy you time. And I guess the other commodity that we might sell here is paper. We do generate quite a bit of paper, but time is the big one. And if you feel comfortable kind of negotiating under fire in oftentimes a very unequal bargaining position, then that might be a situation where you could do some things on your own with your IRS debt. All right? If you want more tips like this, maybe go a little bit deeper into the nuts and bolts of how to solve an IRS problem, be sure and log on to traviswatkinsbook.com and download your free copy of my book, The Ultimate Survival Guide for IRS Problems. Or if you want to talk to me or someone at my firm right now about your IRS problem, 800-721-7054. All right, well, that's the end of this one, and I hope you have a great day and be well, all right? Thanks a lot.